so much to discuss with my guest joining me today, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Hello to you.
Morning.
Nice to see you on this channel for a change. Dirty two-timer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's everywhere. You can't escape him on the airwaves these days, and very rightly so, because it's always fantastic to have you in the studio, as you know. My question to the audience today, I'll put to you. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. We had a bit of a debate in the office. I've always called her Suella Braverman. I'm 99.9% sure it's Braverman. But after one of my colleagues on the sister radio station Times got in very big upset about Robert Jenrick apparently mispronouncing Kimmy Badenoch's name as Badenoch, and apparently that makes you sexist. I want to be careful. I mean, I should mess Suella herself and find out whether she. I mean, I doubt she even cares, but I'm pretty sure it's Suella Braverman. But don't want her telling off from Times Radio for that. But former Home Secretary Suella Braverman is the latest Tory defector to reform. Front page of a lot of the papers. I want to know, though, from you, as I know a lot of you are Tory voters and were Tory voters. I know a lot of you are now reform voters. I know this from the messages, the calls, the messages we get. I want to know, are Tory defections good or bad for reform's appeal to voters at the next election? Tell us why you think they're good, tell us why you think they're bad, tell us all your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts on that, and indeed any of the topics we're talking about today. You know you're always welcome to set the agenda with your own phone calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. All together now. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Tom, very disappointed you didn't join in there.
Sorry about that. That's my cue.
Not my cue.
I thought you were going to make the question, how do you pronounce
that was the question. How do you
go?
Yeah, good. Is this latest defection, is that good or bad for reform?
I think it's on balance a good thing. It's certainly bolstered the sense that all of the momentum is behind reform, that not only are they building up more voters in the country, but also they're peeling off more and more Tory MPs. I also think that when you're talking about defections, there's defections and there's defections. If you've got Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, two people who, regardless of what...
He's gone for Braverman.
Suella Braverman, pick your poison. They are national political figures. They're also people who, unlike some of the earlier defections, were much more consistent on some of the issues, i.e. migration, that have animated the reform revolt. And also, I think I understand this point that people make, that you don't want to look like a quote-unquote retirement home for Tory MPs. At the same time, defections have always been a part of every insurgent political party in recent political history. You know, when Labour was leapfrogging the Liberals in the early 20th century, I think they had like 50 MPs who made the move over in the course of 10 or 15 years. When the SDP were trying to break the mould, they had about 30 MPs defect, the vast majority from Labour. But it's always been a sign that one ship is sinking and the other one is rising. So I think as long as it's the right people to fit the party, then...
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we found that fascinating thing with Andy Streeter and Baroness Ruth Davidson, apparently with the help of Gavin Barwell, former chief sort of advisor, well, chief henchman or whatever, effectively, for Theresa May. And apparently putting together, trying to put, their stamp on. They reckon there are 7 million right-wing, well, centre and centre-right voters who are looking for a party, feel that they're homeless at the moment, and they think that they can take the Tories. Now, there is an argument that the Conservatives and the I suppose the sort of just the sort of the centre ground of the Conservatives kind of shifts to the left every time someone like your Jenricks or your Suella Bravermans or others leave the party, or and others, and it does it does actually sort of shift things within the Conservative Party as well as the Tory Party, as well as the Reform Party. But as lots of people are pointing out, this is getting the old band back together with Boris Johnson. Given the absolute loathing of Boris Johnson that many Reform people have, they moved to Reform because of Boris Johnson's betrayal on things like, okay, we'll get Brexit done. I mean, look, he made, I think, the very best of a very bad deal, given what Theresa May had already given away, short of literally starting from scratch, and frankly would have been years in the making. I don't think he could have done a better deal than he actually did, given where he was with Lord Frost at the time, at the helm on that. But the utter betrayal on immigration is absolutely shocking, on lockdown and all the welfare splurging, you name it. But it's been pointed out, Reform now has Boris Johnson's old Chancellor, Nadine Zahawi, old Community Secretary, that's Robert Jenrick, old Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, old Attorney General, and of course she then went on to be Home Secretary, but she had been his Attorney General, Suella Braverman, his old Political Secretary, Danny Kruger, his old Skills Minister, Andrea Jenkin, his old Northern Powerhouse Minister, went on to be party deputy chairman or chairman, I lost track, Jake Berry. There were so many at one point. His old Health Minister, Maria Coalfield, also his Parliamentary Private Secretary, his Assistant Whip, and a Scottish Minister. That's an awful lot of old Tories. Now, here's the thing. I don't really put Nadine and Jake Berry, Nadine Dorries and Jake Berry, and possibly not even Nadine Zahawi, in the same category as your Robert Jenrick and your Suella Braverman and indeed your Danny Krugers, in terms of people who have been speaking out, and you can believe or not believe Robert Jenrick, but he did nevertheless resign over, he thought, of the failings of the Rwanda affair. Suella Braverman, yeah, she got forced out twice, one over rather just some questionable things, and one over, you know, the fact that she wrote an article basically, you know, saying her views as Home Secretary and got told off by Number 10. She has been at least consistent on this stuff, and certainly in private this is what she's been saying for years, and she's been speaking out. So again, a very easy fit. Fascinating to see some of the left-wing papers. I mean, again, like the Mirror saying, "Oh, this, you know, this Tory nobody moving over to reform." But they put it on the front page as their splash. It's like, well, if you're putting it on the front page, she's clearly not a nobody. I mean, there's your answer there, isn't it?
No, there's a lot of cope going on, as they say on the internet. There's a lot of attempts to pretend like reform aren't making the strides that they are. I mean, the way that we've become so accustomed to reform leading in 200+ polls now, threatening to stage a real upset at the local election. It's been totally normalised. But even if they fall short at the next election, they are still odds on to, at the very least, replace the Conservative Party as the primary party of opposition or the party of the right in this country. Even if they fall short, even if Labour mounts some very unlikely comeback, that in and of itself would be a historic, seismic achievement, something that we haven't seen for a century.
The Conservative Party is the most successful political party in Europe,
and which is now
over a century.
Which is now, if reports are to be believed, pursuing a 60-seat strategy in an attempt to stem the losses as much as it possibly can. This is enormous stuff, and at every turn, for obvious reasons, both people on the left who want to discredit reform as well as the Conservatives who want to stop the bleeding as much as they possibly can, are going to downplay it, say these people are nobodies and whatever. Yeah. The thing is, aside from the individual figures, their backgrounds, what they've said in the past, whatever, the general direction of travel is that voters are moving towards reform. Increasingly, MPs are moving towards reform from the Conservatives, and that's what any of their critics need to reckon with, rather than pretending it's not happening.
And there's only 3 months more and a bit till deadline day, guys, for May the 7th, and the last time to defect. What did you make of the Conservative spokesperson's original statement saying it was all about Suella Braverman? It was always a matter of time, a matter of when. I can't read today, sorry. It was always a matter of when, not if, Suella Braverman would defect. The Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. Big outcry on that, even from some staunch Tory MPs and supporters. They backtracked on that. Apparently it was a draft version. It shouldn't have been in your draft version, guys. No reason to think that Kemi Badenoch saw that, but that tells you the mindset. That is playing very nasty, very dirty, absolutely unacceptable.
I mean, we've all drafted a slightly mean-spirited tweet that never saw the light of day.
Oh, no, I post mine.
But this,
I write nice ones in draft and then go, nah.
But this is the opposition party in our country. Also, if it was a draft, but at the same time in the statement itself it says that this defection was foreseen, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Also, this draft was published and it's out for 2 hours. Before it was
there was
removed.
still an outcry. You're not like, oh God, what have you done? Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, almost more than it being a bit low, a bit unseemly, I think it's the incompetence that speaks to it as much as anything else. This is one thing about the Tory party that's being missed a bit at the moment. Everyone knows that they've lost loads of voters. Everyone knows they're increasingly losing MPs. It's also a slightly ramshackle organisation at the moment. It doesn't have a lot of money. A lot of the donors have left it, which is why you see mistakes like this happening. And you see things like Kemi Badenoch sacking Robert Jenrick on what looks like a Zoom call. They just don't really have the resources or the slickness.
Well, I mean, she was at home when she did that to get it over and done with. But the key thing is, I mean, this is also equally worthy of the Labour Party, and they're in government, and they've got no excuse. They have got the resources.
That's
I mean, we've got. So this is the 2 big parties, the 2 big beasts of British politics, are very much sort of on the back foot right now, despite one of them actually being in office with over 400 MPs. Looks like they may well lose one of their seats, though, the Gorton by-election. Now that Andy Burnham has been blocked from running in it. Likely that he is a big, very popular figure in the Manchester area, that he would have won the Gorton Barton by-election. Blocked from doing it. 50 Labour MPs have signed a letter, private letter apparently, already been leaked, these private letters get leaked, urging the Prime Minister to backtrack on this. PM is off, probably desperate to be never here, kowtow Keir, off to China, flying tonight, always does this just before PMQs, with this big fallout. Meanwhile, we've got an announcement about 2 o'clock today of the Reform candidate for Gorton. We're going to find out the weekend who the Labour candidate is. Big question mark now about who the Greens are going to stand, because Muslim Vote, this organisation set up back in 2023 that backed these Gaza MPs, 4 of the Gaza MPs, basically bringing out completely sectarian voting along religious lines. Basically, they're back in the Green Party. They haven't even announced their candidate yet, but it could well be the Green deputy, Mohsin Ali, many think, who, you know, shouted Allahu Akbar when he won a council election. I mean, this is not necessarily somebody that I think it's going to be a great benefit to Parliament to have in our great debating chamber. But if they're going to back the Greens, and it's 28% of the population is Muslim, although again that is a higher birth rate, more likely to be younger people who are not eligible to vote yet. We could see, that lefty vote split. We could see either Reform winning or we could see Greens winning. No one seems to think that Labour's going to win it now. No, and I think this is one of the issues with blocking Andy Burnham. I mean, Keir Starmer was kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't. I mean, any decision he made would make him look weak. Was it the right decision in the end? Well, was it the least wrong decision? It depends what your objective is. I mean, if it's to win this by-election, then Andy Burnham is by far the strongest candidate. He does have, whatever his shortcomings, which there are many, pretty good standing in Manchester. He has been re-elected mayor 3 times on quite large they majority. Would likely have lost Manchester mayoralty, which is a bigger proposition. But of anyone who was standing in that race in that by-election, if he wasn't blocked and was to be successful, his stature, I think, would stand Labour in the best stead, shall we say, of returning that, rather than the vote becoming split. But does a by-election, one seat, matter as much as the mayor of Greater Manchester, which is basically 20 constituencies? Almost certainly not, but I think it's one of those things where it entirely depends. If it was trying to retain that parliamentary seat, it's probably the wrong decision. If it was trying to give Keir Starmer a stay of execution or whittle down at least the number of people who were trying to take his job, then it was obviously the right decision. But it's just this is the thing about Keir Starmer's Labour Party. It has no good choices anymore. Yeah. And really all it's involved in is trying to delay its eventual crumbling. Every decision needs to be read in that light at this point. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think anything's a sure thing in British politics anymore. That feels as inevitable as anything could be. You think the Keir Starmer comeback is underpriced? That would be. I mean, good God. Not just squeaking the next election, but loved, adored. Yeah, anyone who thinks Andy Burnham would be a better bet when he wants to apparently put Ed Miliband in as Chancellor. I mean, seriously. Again, I was saying, it would be a great week. It really would be a great week before we are absolutely back in caves. I mean, it's interesting. We've even got, some of the big unions now sort of saying, we are going to be in crisis under net zero policies from Edmund. At some point in the next year, I mean, if he lasts that long, we're going to have to see the Prime Minister backtracking on this stuff. The Tories did. I've said that for years. Tories were going to, none of these policies survive any contact with reality, and they really, really don't. Will Keir Starmer survive contact with the Chinese? Now, we've got Xi Jinping, who's just ousted the last remaining possible challenger to him in the Chinese military command. The purge is complete. He has absolute power over that country. This guy he is the smiling assassin. I mean, quite literally, he is a murderous tyrant. But, Keir Starmer's off to kowtow to him, second biggest economy in the world. But it's emerged front page of the Telegraph today. China hacked the mobile phones of senior officials in Downing Street for several years. The closest aides of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak between 21 and 24 are believed to have been targeted. It's unclear whether they actually managed to hack the mobile phones of prime ministers. But we know that all those prime ministers had their mobile phones taken away from them. Basically, I remember Liz Truss saying, literally put in a sealed room. So that they couldn't access any more information. And, people like me sort of lost direct contact with these people for a while and couldn't work out why they weren't returning messages. But that was why their phones were taken away. So I think it's very likely that the prime ministers themselves were actually hacked as well. I mean, is there any point in us going to China? Presumably they're still doing the hacking. We've just given them the Chinese embassy. Why don't we just literally say, pop into MI5 and MI6, pop into number 10, have a look at everything, save everyone some time? I mean, it does feel like that would be the neatest solution, given the sort of... These stories come up and people pretend to be shocked and appalled by them.
and you wonder why. First of all, because you're talking about the Chinese Communist Party, totalitarian, authoritarian, gives no truck for the rights of its own citizens, let alone the diplomacy and rights of people in this country. Also, the other thing that's worth saying is that even relatively friendly states spying on each other is a fact.
We had America spying
life.
on Germany, didn't
exactly.
we?
Angela Merkel's phone being hacked during the Obama
I mean, I'm
years.
hoping we're spying on the Chinese. I just imagine we're not doing it as well as they've done it to us.
Quite, and also maybe you would think that they're not making it as easy as well. I mean, the way in which when you saw those various scandals, I mean, the fact that Boris Johnson basically had the same phone number for so many years, even when he was, in journalism or was a much lower-ranking politician. But at the same time, you think there would be some extra level of protection. Maybe there's a new phone which comes into play. Maybe it doesn't have to get as low-tech as, sealing these things in a plastic bag and telling them not to touch them during particularly sensitive meetings. This doesn't bode well for the security of the British state. But again, they make these decisions willfully. They, hand over the Royal Mint, as you say, despite its proximity to all of those fibre optic cables with all of that classified financial information, to the Chinese Communist Party, and then wonder why security is compromised.
It's mind-blowing.
It's from a position of weakness, as we know. They want to do business with China, but still, there's a line, surely.
But again, you can want to do business. There's this idea that, they won't do business with us. Yeah, they will. They need to sell something. The entire Chinese economy relies on those exports. But maybe we shouldn't make it quite so easy. Again, they want to dump their electric vehicles on us, their solar panels, their wind turbines. They know they're weakening us. I mean, they are laughing their heads off as they help us deindustrialise. They really are. I think we can safely say this trip, he's going to end up in Japan afterwards, but we can safely say this trip is going to leave Britain worse off. The guy is a walking disaster when it comes to negotiations. I mean, genuinely, I would put a 3-year-old up against Keir Starmer in a negotiation for a lollipop. This man is so poor. Let's also talk about our other big ally, biggest economy in the world, biggest military in the world, and that is America, of course. Donald Trump, it's really interesting seeing his spokesperson, just basically kind of rowing back from this absolute blanket support there has been for ICE agents, certainly in the wake of the killing of Renee Good when she was shot when she was in her car, screaming at, and let's face it, driving at an ICE agent. I always said, shouldn't have been there, shouldn't have driven her car, but it wasn't necessary for her to be shot, and that was the wrong thing to have done. But I can understand why these things happen. I think these people who are protesting ICE agents doing their job are in the wrong themselves. But that doesn't. There are too many trigger-happy law enforcement officers on American streets, and we know that already. The killing of Alex Pretty is looking much more questionable. I mean, we've seen so many different angles, so much of what actually went on. Complete over-the-top reaction from the ICE agents. I can absolutely see why they thought he had a gun. When someone shouts gun, but they've actually recovered a gun, it's chaos. There's whistles. There's point blank shooting because they were convinced he had a gun. I think that they were going, where's the gun? Where's the gun? I'm willing to think that they thought that, but they created, as did the protesters as well, the chaos where that could happen. Now, the Border Control Commander Gregory Bavino, apparently a huge hated figure, and some of his immigration agents are basically going to be ordered to depart not just Minneapolis, but also the state as well. The border czar, Tom Homan, who apparently is a little bit more conciliatory, he's going to lead on-the-ground efforts in the Minnesota city after the shooting of Alex Pretty. There's been a sort of a row back by the American authorities, less sort of gung-ho, they were in the right. I mean, some of the claims by Greg Bavino, I mean, he's almost as bad as some other figures in the American administration, just basically sort of accusing this guy of being a terrorist and about to try and commit mass murder. Yeah, he had a gun on him legally, but there was no evidence for that whatsoever. He hadn't drawn his gun, hadn't attempted to draw his gun. This has all become highly, highly charged and highly politicised, hasn't it?
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things where we've got to separate out a few things here. One of which is that, of course, when you have, as in America, armed police forces, armed ICE agents, and what have you, that horrible things happen. And because of the fact that the officers are armed, also the people they're coming into contact with are armed, the stakes are much higher than any interaction you would see between border officials or police and members of the public in this country, for instance. There's one thing that's worth checking. America periodically now will have these sorts of almost social media forensics rows, different angles over certain forms of police shootings. We're now seeing that kind of globalised, and even people in Britain looking into it. So it's worth saying that it's always worth waiting for full investigations to take place and for as much information to come out before one forms a view. Although, as you say, in this case, the more we learn, the more questionable it becomes. But at the same time, it's also clear that the fact that not only is the administration committed to deporting illegal migrants and to making clear that this is no longer going to be tolerated, the kind of shock and awe tactics to which they've tried to do that, partly to send a message as much as anything else, is going to produce more of these situations, regrettably, and it's also going to turn off a larger portion of the electorate. You're already seeing that in the polls. There's an uneasiness.
It's still got full. It still has more support, than people opposed to it. But again, a lot of the theatre is now because of the protesters.
Yeah, well, of course.
The protesters are protesting a electorally mandated legal government power
and that is
that is being
enforced.
enforced. Which, by the way, was something we discussed on the show yesterday. Obama did exactly the same. They weren't objecting to it then. They're only objecting to it because it's Trump ordering it. Because he's a fascist and Obama was a good guy, so the policy was okay when he did it.
That is the other side of the equation. Absolutely, these people are often willfully putting themselves in harm's way when you try and disrupt what is a state agency fulfilling what they have been ordered to do, which has a pretty firm democratic mandate behind it. That is clearly raises questions on their side. At the same time, I think the administration would be careful not to allow this to essentially tar the whole enterprise.
Yeah,
because
I think the rowing back is a good idea.
A lot of people are looking to America as it being possible to do these things and to do it in a way that is humane and straightforward. If that starts to sour, that could have implications not just America.
Humane, I think, is an overused word. I mean, it should be legal. But if you're in the country illegally and you commit a crime and they tell you to leave, you should. A, you shouldn't be in the country. B, you shouldn't commit the crime. C, you should leave. And if they have to go and send the heavies round to get you out, that's your fault. I'm sorry, that's your fault.
No, ultimately it does.
They've got guns because everyone else has got guns.
I'm not talking about asking them nicely, but I'm saying if it becomes associated with something which just looks, or
But I don't think a load of protesters like blowing whistles and screaming abuse, fascist and Nazi, at people carrying out their jobs. I mean, someone screamed abuse like that and screamed. I wish I had a gun. I'm not going to lie. I'm serious. I still think neither of these shootings had to happen, but I think both sides are at fault on both occasions. That's where I am.